Teamwork. So I want to talk a little bit about teamwork and the process that I want you to follow for this class. The basic workflow is as follows. I expect every team to meet every week, hopefully face to face. They shouldn't be too hard to schedule. In that meeting, what you're going to do is first you're going to discuss the progress, and then you're going to figure out what you're going to do next. Pretty simple. You're going to decide what things have happened, what things need to happen, and in what order. And that's always a tricky part when you're coding. You have to figure out the order in which you need to develop the next features, etc. So you do that. And then most importantly, number B here, you want to assign to each person what they're going to do for next week, right? So GitHub issues, we talked about those. So you're going to create a GitHub issue for everybody, or sometimes many GitHub issues for each person, and assign them to each person. It's important that you do this individually. Don't say, you two or you three people are going to do this. That's not good enough. You have to, assign it to each person. So you want to try to break it up into individual tasks. Then you go off and you work. So during the whole week, everybody works. It's very important that you keep up communication. So you want to communicate constantly with your other team members as you do things. So I did this thing, or I have a problem with this thing, so I can't do that other thing. You can do this in many ways, right? So you use GitHub issues to chat and talk about and comment on a particular issue. We're using Slack. You can use that to send text messages, instant messages to everybody. And you can use whatever you need, phone, in person. Just keep the lines of communication open. At some point, you will finish your task, and at that point, you close the issue on GitHub. That's done. That also will let everybody know that you're done the moment you close it. So it's important. So people forget to close their issues. I don't know why. So close them, you're done. And as you're doing, really task A, you'll probably many times find that, in order to do this, I need to do this other thing. So you are going to be constantly creating new issues that maybe you can add them. Maybe if it's a small thing, you can add it, get it done right away. Or maybe something that needs to be discussed and then at the next meeting, or maybe you can discuss it right there on Slack. So you make those decisions. So this is the basic workflow. It is very minimal, and it's it's just follows through. Maybe after you get good at it, you don't need to meet every week face to face. You can move everything to Slack or something like that, where it's more basically you start doing this every week, and then it gets smaller and smaller. You do more meetings and so forth, and you can, if you get good at it, you might be able to just not have the meetings. In a real world, the real world, there is a little bit more structure, right? So this is a video, you should watch it to see. This is Scrum in 10 minutes. It's a way to organize the development process, and you'll see they have a lot more structure to it. They have a project manager, you have user stories, you have somebody in charge of the user stories. People, when you get an issue, you have to create an estimate for it, etc. But it's not that much actually. It is probably more than you will want to do for this class. But in the real world, you need a little bit more, right? So this is, again, we're assuming a bunch of people, over 10 or a dozen or more, working full time, unlike in this class where this is just one of your classes. But once you have people working full time, there's a lot more work to be done. There's a lot more accountability, a lot more people interested in what you're doing. So these things, you need a little more structure. So check it out. For this class, there's some tools like, these three tools over here, Waffle, Trello, and ZenHub. These are sort of Kanban boards, online Kanban boards that let you post like little post-it notes and move them around, and they can be useful. So you might want to check these out maybe as you get better as a way of collaborating online and offline. They're pretty neat. Okay, firing a team member. If you have a non-performing team member, you can fire them from the team, which means that they're going to be fired from the class. They will fail the class. So how do you do this? You keep a record of their performance or lack thereof. This is so some of this is going to be done for you automatically because everything is in Git, all the code is in Git, and so we can look at their commits, all the wiki, all the milestones that you turn in are on the wiki, on the GitHub wiki, so we can see who did what. Other things like meeting attendance and keeping track of specifically what they did on some particular milestones that don't use the wiki. Some of the early ones don't. You can keep track of that. Just have a record of what they have done or what the team has done, and then show that they haven't contributed. Bring that to me. Step 2. Bring it to me, and then at that point I will give a student a formal warning that said, look, this is happening, you haven't done anything. This is your second and last chance. And if after a couple of weeks we see no significant improvement, the student will fail the class, so he will get fired. So this is there. It is the last resort. I hope nobody has to use this, but it is there. It can happen. So let's talk about some of the common team dysfunctions. So these are, this is the general, very popular pyramid about, classifying the possible reasons for dysfunction. You don't trust each other. You're afraid of conflicts, so nobody wants to raise and start a discussion. You're not committed. This is very common for us here. People are not committed to the class. They're not committed to getting things done. That's always a problem. You avoid accountability. So you don't get, this is going to be hard to do because we have logs, but people try to avoid accountability, just try to hide in the crowd, and not being inattention to results, not paying attention to what you're doing. So those are the general reasons. Now specifically, let's talk about some of the dysfunctional members, or dysfunctions of the team that actually are common in this class, have we seen in the past. So one common problem with some student is he might be too busy for class. So he might have been taking a lot of classes, has a job, has family commitments, has a busy social life, etc. Just no time to work on this class. That's fine. You have your priorities. That's great. So, but you really should drop this class, right? So if you don't have the time to do the work, there's a lot of work in this class. There's a lot of programming. Programming takes time, and this discussions takes time. If you don't have the time to do it, just drop it. Take it next year when you have time, and you're going to do well, and you're going to learn. So it's much better to do that, to wait a year, do it well, than to get fired in this class and get an F. So please do that. Then there's also just a total slacker. Again, unfortunately, we've seen these. Somebody who just doesn't want to do anything. There's nothing to do but fire them. So again, the process. If you get one of these people in your team, you can fire them. Another thing we see is people who just feel uncomfortable about committing code. So they've done some work, it's there in their laptop, but they're like, I don't want to push it. I don't want to commit it. I don't want to put it on GitHub. Oh, it's not good enough. Oh, they're going to laugh at me. Oh, and they have a lot of excuses where they say, oh, well, it doesn't totally work. I still want to do this other thing. So you got to stop that, right? So it's never going to be perfect. Your code will never be perfect. And no matter what you do, somebody out there will always tell you your code sucks, because it does. All of our code sucks, except, of course, for Linus Torvalds. His code is awesome. But anybody else in the world, our code sucks, and it's just getting better slowly over time. So this is the way you want to see it. Each commit is part of a process. You make a little commit that goes there, and everybody sees it. They comment on it. They might say, oh, okay, well, that's good, but we can do it better. And, you get better. It's just little steps, right? A commit is not a final thing. It's just a step. So small commits. And again, people don't believe me. Students don't believe me when I say this. So here is you can click on that link and see the log of Git itself, right? The program, and look at the commits for it. You can do this for almost any project, right? Just go in GitHub, look through the commits, and you see this is one commit by Linus Torvalds himself. And this is it. He changed 2 lines of code. 2 lines of code. That was the whole commit, right? And you go through the whole list of commits, and you see none of them are more than 1 page. It's really, really, really rare. So most commits are like a paragraph of code. That's what you're shooting for. Now it can be a little harder when you're working on certain, like Android, whatever, has all these XML auto-generated files, etc. But I'm talking about the code you actually changed. That should be small, right? So keep your commit small. If you don't believe me, go to GitHub, find your favorite project. That's good. And go check out their commit logs, right? So commits are small. There are many reasons for this. You want to, if they're small, you can always go back, undo them, and, look at what you did. You can discuss them easier, right? You can separate your things. So keep them small. If you keep them small, then hopefully this will make you feel more comfortable. So you're just making a little change, pushing that little change. How bad can it be? It's just one line of code I change. So hopefully that'll help build your confidence and get the team running smoother. Clueless. So another one problem we have is people look at when you look at the milestones for this class, you notice that the first half of the semester you're not actually programming in your app for the class, right? So we have all of the design milestones and requirements, analysis, etc. That does not mean you're not coding. Yes, you are coding during the first half of the semester. What you need to do is, the moment your team decides what the platform you're using, whether it's Android, iOS, Rails, Django, whatever, you go and learn it, right? So you probably don't know it. You probably haven't never done Android or whatever. So you have a lot to learn. You have to go in and build a little app, right? So this is more than just Hello World. So some students will say, oh, I'm doing Android, so I install Android Studio and I go through a tutorial and now I can build Hello World, and then that's it, that they stop. That's nothing. I mean, that is super important. You have obviously to do that. You have to do that, but that is just the first step, right? All that tells you is that you installed everything correctly, which again is super important, but it's just the first step. You have to actually build something that does something. You have to, I recommend, read the book or take the class. There are all these online classes on Android and iOS and Rails and whatever, and all these videos that you can watch that will teach you the basics. You don't have to become an expert. You will be an expert by May, but you don't have to become an expert yet, but you do need to have done something to understand how the platform works. Right, so for example, so you're doing Android handheld, so build a little calculator, right? It might look awful, it just does additions, but you know how buttons work, and you know how to handle events, and you can add numbers. So that's a little example. Similarly, if you're doing some sort of web app, build something that you can enter, like a little bloggy thing is the usual example, where you can enter comments and the comments appear and people can come in and add more comments, that kind of stuff. So if you don't do this, you risk becoming the slacker that we talked about, right? So this is the problem. Many people forget to do this during the first half of the semester. Not many, but some people. And then second half comes, and then basically they have to do all this while everybody else is busy, starting to program and building the code. So by the end of the year, they haven't done anything at all, and they fail the class. So don't do that. Don't be that guy. Okay, I know that at the other end of the spectrum, you have Mr. Know-It-All. So this is, sometimes there'll be somebody who has prior experience. So say you're doing now Rails. So there's somebody who has built some Rails app as a summer job or whatever, and they know how it works, has prior experience. So if you're this person, what you need to do is help other people, right? So during the first semester, the first half of the semester, everybody else is going to be learning about Rails. So you let them do their thing, you let them learn. If they have questions, you can answer them, and you should answer them. But more importantly, once you start coding, you're still probably going to have more knowledge, just general knowledge of Rails, so you can do some high level stuff, right? So you can step back and say, okay, I think these are the classes we need. And Rails has the model view controllers, so you can decide, well, these are the views we need, and this is the controller. This is what's going to go in the controller. This is the model that we're going to use. You can set maybe set that up or help people setting it up. And then more importantly, you divide the work at that point. So you're sort of a high level architect. You decide what the classes are going to be, what the views and models are, and assign them to people. And most importantly, you do not do those, right? So once you assign somebody to do, you're going to do the view for the employee, they're going to do it. And obviously, it's going to take them more time than it would take you to do it, but that's fine, right? Just let them do it. So only if it takes excessively long time, right? So we're getting near the end, and then so you give them 2 weeks, they didn't do it or whatever, then they start to become a slacker, and you have to deal with that. But that's how you should behave if you are the know-it-all in the group. You definitely don't want to just say, take over the project, say, okay, I can do this much faster than all of you, so I'm just going to do it. Do not do that. This will be bad for you in terms of your grade. And also, it's just really just not the way it's done. You want to help other people come up to speed, so now you can all work together. So then we have the pessimist. A pessimist, and this is sort of an attitude problem. The pessimists just don't think that everything's impossible, that, oh, we can't do that. And this is sort of an engineering trait. I mean, I think when people ask you, can you make that feature? If you're a developer, you're immediately thinking, how hard is that going to be? Obviously, this is going to be work for me. And, it's all bad sort of in your head. It's like, oh, no, well, I have to do this, I have to do that. I don't even know. So it's easy to develop this negative attitude, but you just don't. So when people ask you, can you do something? Your answer should be yes. Because basically that's always true, right? If you say, can you implement this? The answer is always yes. You can always add buttons. You can always do it. It's just a matter of how long it's going to take. So you say, yes, we can do this. And then you look into how long it's going to take. And then this is when you, in your meetings, you organize priorities, right? So you decide, well, these are all things we can do, but which one should we do first? So I would say, yes, we can do this. And then you prioritize later. Say like, yeah, we can definitely do this, but that's going to take like a whole year. So maybe we'll put that as a lower priority. So everything is just a trade-off. Don't say no, just say yes. And then figure out how long it's going to take. Finally, again, this is an issue I see a lot, is sort of the silent team. We have, as you know, you're going to be meeting, the whole team's going to be meeting with me every other week. And I see this often. The team comes in and they haven't talked to each other since the last time they met with me. That is really bad, right? So you have to know, you can't just show up to our meetings, and just in general, you have to know what everybody else is working on, right? So you have to talk to each other. If you don't talk to each other, the whole thing is going to fall apart, right? So it should never be that, you ask this question, what have you been working in the past 2 weeks? You have your weekly meetings, you have your GitHub issues, you have Slack, and whatever other technologies that you might need to implement. If you have to use SMS or Facebook or whatever, do that. But mostly, communicate. Whenever you get something done, tell everybody. Whenever you have problem, tell everybody. Whenever I'm not going to get this done because, personal reasons, tell everybody. So tell people what you're doing and what you're not doing.